This story, I just had to tell it because one of its names is Leanne of the Golden Hair, and it's even spelled Liane, Leanne of the Golden Hair. It's actually from Romania. I couldn't find its equivalent in Ukraine, but I believe there's a lot of stories about Leanne of the Golden Hair there, and sometimes it's also known as the Princess Who Wore Armour, depending on which protagonist you care to focus on. So, once upon a time, a long time ago, there was a king who had 3 strong and capable daughters. But the emperor had sent for each noble family to send a male relative for his army. And this king had fought in the last war, and he had maimed his leg, and he was old, and he was not fit to fight. And so his oldest daughter, Anya, said, "Father, I will go in your place." And she took her hair, and she put it up under her helmet. She had a suit of armor made for her, and she got on a fast horse, and she rode off. Now, there was just one river between their realm and the emperor's, and there was just one bridge over that river. And when the princess Anya got to that bridge, it was engulfed in flames. Now, she was a brave girl, so she rode forward, but when the horse's mane got singed, it turned around and ran all the way home. And her father said, "Anya, this is as it should be. You will stay here and protect our realm." And the second daughter, Rena, she said, "Father, I will go in your place." And she tucked her braids up under a hat, and she picked out the fastest, strongest horse in their stable, and she rode off. And when she got to the bridge, she hopped off of the horse, and she took a good look at the bridge, and she made a contraption with pulleys and ropes to carry her and the horse under the bridge over the river. But when they got halfway across, that flame expanded until it singed the tail of her horse, and he dragged her sopping wet all the way home. And her father said, "Rena, this is as it should be. You will stay home and use that creative mind of yours for all well, and I will go." And the youngest daughter, Luda, said, "But Father, I will go." He said, "No, you've just turned 14. Your older sisters weren't able to do this. You stay home. I will go in the morning." So that night, she snuck into the treasury, and she stole her father's armor that he had worn during the last war. And she cut her hair and put on the helmet, and it felt right. And she picked up his sword, and it felt good in her arm. And then she went to the stable, and she sought out her father's old war horse, Sunray. And he was old, and he was gray, and he was knock-kneed and asthmatic, and I'm sure if you could have gotten your fingers near his mouth, you would have seen just nubs in there. But she threw her arms around his neck and said, "Sunray, I know there's something special about you. Father always said that you were the only reason he got through the war." And so she mounted the horse and rode off. And they were just about halfway to the bridge when she noticed that the horse was moving at a much smoother gait, and that his coat was getting glossy and dark. And she said, "Sunray, what's going on?" And to her shock, because it's a story, the horse talked to her. He said, "Well, you were right. I am a magical being, and I did get your father through the war, and I believe that I can get you through this adventure too if you ask for advice and follow it." She said, "Well, what should I do about this burning bridge?" And Sunrise said, "Reach into my left ear." And so she did, and she pulled out a flask. She said, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And the horse said, "Fill it up in that stream, and we'll go to the bridge." And when they got to the bridge, she hopped off of the horse, and Sunray said, "Now, you have to take that flask, and you have to throw it right to the dead center of the flame." And so she got as close as she dared, and she hauled off, and she threw that flask, and boom, right dead center of the flame, and it exploded with the water and put the fire out. and they rode across into the emperor's land. And as they were riding, she said, Sunray, what should I do when I get to the emperor's army camp? And Sunray said, well, tell no one that you are a girl. And so she told no one. She trained with all of the other soldiers, and it felt good. She was good at it, and she was well-liked throughout the camp. And then the emperor came and said, I am raising all of you together because our most precious treasure, my daughter, Leanne of the golden hair, has been kidnapped by the sorceress of the north. And everyone in the army gasped because Leanne of the golden hair was the treasure of the empire. Everywhere she walked, she blessed the land. Every word she said was wisdom, and her every act was kindness. And so they marched off into the sorceress's land up to the north. And they had just gotten just a little ways out from the castle, and they were marching 5 by 5 along a cliff that was 50 feet right down into the ocean. And a fog rolled in and befuddled their minds and made it impossible for them to see. And Luda, she could hear half of the emperor's army falling, screaming to their deaths. And she said, Sunray, what should we do? And Sunray said, close your eyes and listen for the cock's crow. That will be the direction to ride. And so she raised her voice and she said, everyone, follow the sound of the cock's crow. And she led the army out of the fog. And there they were, right in front of the sorceress's castle, the tower where Leanne was being kept prisoner at the top. And they looked up and they saw an enormous creature flying around the top of the tower. And just as they realized it was a dragon, it dive-bombed and scattered the army, and half of them ran all the way home. But the ones who were left regathered and stood firm. And Luda said, Sunray, what should we do? And Sunray said, that dragon is the sorceress herself. Do not try to fight her. Reach into your saddlebags and bring out the bag of gold coins that is there, and I will lay a trap for the sorceress. And so she stood there with her hand on her sword that she kept in its hilt, and she heard soldier after soldier, night after night, being flamed as the dragon fought them until it was just Luda standing. And that took the dragon aback. She said, are you foolish, or are you petrified that you stand here before me without even bringing out your sword? And Luda said, neither. I have something for you. And she stepped aside to show the dragon the trail of gold coins leading away from the castle. And the sorceress was caught up in the dragon's lust for gold, and off she flew. And there was Luda right in front of the tower, and she yelled up to Leanne, how can I save you from your prison? And Leanne of the golden hair, she looked out of her window, and she saw what she thought was a comely youth asking her for advice. So her heart began to beat very quickly, and she said, there is a magic stair, and gave directions. And Luda ran around the back and up the magic stair, and just as she was bursting into Leanne's prison, their eyes met. And Leanne of the golden hair gave her heart to her rescuer. And I must tell you that Luda felt something as well. And she put her arms around Leanne of the golden hair and said, do you trust me? And Leanne said, with my life. And Luda leapt out of the window at the top of the tower, and they could hear the dragon returning, and they were falling, hurtling towards their death when Sunray came around the corner, and they landed in his saddle, and they ran off back to the emperor's palace. But the dragon was behind them, and Luda said, "Sunray, what should we do?" And Sunray said, "I believe your companion knows what to do." And Leanne took a snip of her golden curls and handed it to Luda and said, "Throw this behind us." And when she threw it behind them, a forest of solid gold trees sprang up and stopped the dragon cold. Now, Leanne of the golden hair and Luda rode back to the emperor's palace, but I'm going to leave you with them here. Rest assured, though they have a dilemma to solve and secrets to be unveiled, Leanne of the golden hair and Luda and Sunray were never apart for very long, ever again. Thank you.